March 2007, the TED Conference. J.J. Abrams walks onto the stage carrying a box. It's a magic shop prop, something called the Tannen's Magic Mystery Box, advertised as $50 of magic for $15, purchased decades earlier and never opened. He holds it up and tells the audience it represents something essential to his creative process. Mystery is the catalyst for imagination, he says. The withholding of information, doing that intentionally, is much more engaging. Then, I started thinking about Lost and all the things we do, and I realized, oh my God, mystery boxes are everywhere in the things I do. He named it himself. That's the first thing to establish. The mystery box isn't a label critics invented retroactively to explain away disappointing films. It's a documented technique, named on a TED stage by its practitioner 8 years before he directed a single frame of Star Wars. What the technique does, structurally, is this. Act 1. Plant a question with maximum dramatic charge. Act 2. Gesture toward a revelation without delivering it. Act 3. Withhold the answer, because the answer would be smaller than the question. In television, the structure works. You defer the reveal across seasons, and the audience keeps watching. In mid-budget action films, the questions are essentially decorative, and pace papers over the gaps. But in world-building dependent space opera, every question the filmmaker asks opens onto a system the audience expects to be coherent. That system doesn't wait for the next season. It already exists. Abrams co-created Felicity, a college drama on the WB, with Matt Reeves in 1998. He was the showrunner for its first 2 seasons. He co-created Lost in 2004 with Damon Lindelof and Jeffrey Lieber, directed and co-wrote the 2-hour pilot, then stepped back. Lindelof and Carlton Cuse ran the show from there. By the time the Lost finale aired in 2010, Abrams hadn't written a single episode since the season 3 premiere. His first feature directing credit was Mission Impossible 3 in 2006. Star Trek followed in 2009, then Star Trek Into Darkness in 2013. Every major credit before Star Wars was either television or mid-budget action, genres where the mystery box is a viable instrument. Star Trek 2009 landed at 94% on Rotten Tomatoes and became the highest-grossing domestic Star Trek film to that point. It worked commercially and critically, but embedded in that success was a technique that would fail under heavier structural load. The film leans on callback, emotional shorthand borrowed from prior Trek canon, rather than earned by the rebooted film's internal logic. Kirk stranded on Delta Vega is a reference to a TOS episode. Ambassador Spock's appearance is Leonard Nimoy as nostalgic weight, functioning as a substitute for emotional groundwork the new timeline hadn't built. The technique generates warmth without requiring construction. Star Trek Into Darkness pushed further. The film staged Kirk's radiation death as an inverted mirror of Spock's death in The Wrath of Khan, then had Zachary Quinto deliver the Khan scream as the emotional payoff. The AV Club called it close to heresy and cynical. Abrams later publicly stated he regretted hiding the Khan identity reveal, an acknowledgement, after the fact, that the mystery box concealment had been a miscalculation rather than a narrative choice that paid off. Disney announced Abrams as director of The Force Awakens on January 25, 2013, on the strength of Star Trek 2009. The callback as substance technique arrived with him, now operating at franchise scale. Case Study 1. Snoke. In The Force Awakens, Supreme Leader Snoke appears exclusively via hologram, an enormous projection towering over his subordinates. His function in the film is to issue strategic orders regarding the map to Skywalker. His origin is left blank. His relationship to the Force is gestured at, but not defined. Every frame he appears in is a mystery box. The question asked, the answer deferred. Rian Johnson killed Snoke in The Last Jedi. He stated his reasoning was narrative. Snoke's death served Kylo Ren's arc, broke the apprentice from the master, and was the structural development the story needed. The problem that created was structural. The mystery box Abrams opened now had to be closed by someone who didn't plant it. The Rise of Skywalker closed it. Kylo discovers a chamber containing multiple Snokes, floating in liquid containers. Palpatine tells him, "Snoke trained you well." The film's opening crawl had already set the table. Somehow, Palpatine returned. That word, somehow, is the entire explanation offered across 3 films for the franchise's central villain. One comment on a video about the Final Order fleet put it cleanly. The best rationale from Disney you're going to get is somehow. Case Study 2. Rey's Parentage. The Force Awakens plants the question of Rey's origin across multiple scenes. A Force vision fragments her childhood abandonment on Jakku. Maz Kanata deflects the direct question with deliberate evasion. Rey waits for family that never comes. Every element is structured to produce the same question in the viewer. Who are her parents, and why does it matter? Johnson answered it in The Last Jedi. Kylo Ren tells Rey her parents were filthy junk traders who sold her off for drinking money. She is no one. Her power in the Force comes from nowhere significant. That answer was deliberately deflationary. It closed the mystery box and said the box was empty. Abrams reopened it in The Rise of Skywalker. Kylo tells her, "You're a Palpatine." Her father was a failed Palpatine clone who turned away from the dark side. Her parents hid her on Jakku to protect her from the Emperor. The trilogy's central character arc, the question of who Rey is, was opened in 2015, answered in 2017, and unanswered in 2019. That isn't a trilogy telling one story. That's the mystery box applied to a human being across 9 hours of film. Case Study 3. The Final Order Fleet. The Rise of Skywalker finds 1,080 Zeiston-class Star Destroyers on Exegol, each 2,406 meters long, each requiring a crew of 29,585, according to the visual dictionary compiled by Lucasfilm Story Group member Pablo Hidalgo. Multiply those numbers and the fleet's total complement approaches 31.9 million personnel, all raised in isolation on a hidden world, loyal to a Sith cult that had been operating in secret for 35 years while the galaxy remained unaware. The film doesn't ask that question. It doesn't answer it. The Sith eternal workforce is gestured at. Cultists, Sith troopers, people born on Exegol and raised for this purpose. But how a hidden planet sustained the raw material supply chains, manufacturing infrastructure, and population base to produce 1,080 capital warships is never addressed. One viewer comment identified the exact break. "I thought it was droid or automated, then they showed human crew." That's not a nitpick. That's the audience locating the precise moment the world-building contract got violated. Those 1,080 ships then need to deploy, which requires navigational clearance they can't achieve because the Resistance destroys their navigation tower. An entire fleet of planet-destroying warships, crewed by tens of millions, can't lift off because a small strike team took out one antenna. That's not a world-building problem in isolation. That's the product of plotting for momentum rather than coherence. Case Study 4. Orbaks on a Star Destroyer. When the navigation signal is transferred to Allegiant General Pride's command ship, the Steadfast, Finn and Janna lead a strike force to its hull. They ride Orbaks, large horse-equivalent creatures, across the exterior plating during an active space battle. The tactical objective is stated: destroy the communications tower. The questions the film doesn't pause to address. How are riders and animals surviving on the exterior hull of a ship in near vacuum, and how did the Orbaks board in the first place? Abrams cuts through the sequence fast enough that you can't hold the question still long enough to ask it. The AV Club described his Into Darkness as a machine built for speed, fueled by its unyielding digital cacophony. The phrase fits the Orbak charge precisely. Speed is the argument. One comment with 210 likes put it more directly. Horses in wigs on a Star Destroyer's hull is enough to end the discussion about how serious the sequel trilogy can be taken. The Holdo maneuver, introduced in The Last Jedi, established that a ship at lightspeed driven through another ship is catastrophically destructive. If that's true, and the film makes it visually, physically undeniable, then every prior space battle in Star Wars history is rendered irrational. Why did no one use this before? The Rise of Skywalker introduces hyperspace skipping, the Millennium Falcon jumping in and out of hyperspace in rapid succession as a navigation trick, without acknowledging that the franchise now has two incompatible rules governing what hyperspace can do. A comment connecting these. Piloting a Star Destroyer isn't like flipping burgers. Oh, that's why they couldn't figure out how to go up. These aren't continuity oversights. They're the product of a storytelling approach that treats the immediate visual payoff as the finished product. September 5th, 2017. Lucasfilm announces it has mutually parted ways with Colin Trevorrow as director of Episode 9. Trevorrow had been hired in August 2015 and had written a screenplay with his writing partner Derek Connolly. On September 12, 2017, 1 week later, Abrams was announced as his replacement. Disney hired Abrams for The Force Awakens because Star Trek 2009 delivered commercially. They hired him for The Rise of Skywalker because Trevorrow was gone and Abrams was reportedly available. There was no evidence that either hire involved an institutional analysis of whether Abrams' specific directorial toolkit, the mystery box, the callback as substance, the fast-cut momentum editing, was compatible with the genre they had purchased for $4 billion. The evaluation was commercial track record. Star Wars is a commercial property. Match made. The genre wasn't consulted. One comment, 181 likes. Spectacle without substance is how I describe J.J. Abrams as a director. That's the audience's verdict, arrived at without a script. And from a video examining the Final Order fleet specifically, the top comment, 1,600 likes. 10 seconds in, and I know what the problem. You're already thinking more about the scene than the writers ever cared to. Disney bought a world-building franchise. They hired a mystery box director. They did it twice. The genre was the casualty. Subscribe for more stories like this.